What is fear? We tend to think of it as a warning system, a reaction to external threats. But the deepest, most debilitating form of fear is not of the world, but of yourself. It is the fear of honesty, the terror of what you might discover if you look past the comfortable fictions you've created about your abilities, your morality, and your value. This internal fear paralyzes you, keeping you small, predictable, and fundamentally weak. The only known cure for this paralyzing self-fear is radical truthfulness. To guide us on this path, we turn to the philosopher who demanded the most rigorous self-honesty, Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche understood that true courage is not the absence of fear, but the courage to face the facts, both about the world and, more importantly, about your own ruthless nature. He saw that the common man is terrified of self-knowledge because it shatters the moral illusions they rely on for comfort. Nietzsche's path to fearlessness is simple. You must first accept the monster you are, to become the Übermensch you might be. This is the truth of self-overcoming. It demands that you confront the shadows, the instincts, and the psychological realities you desperately hide. Only by affirming the totality of your nature, including its capacity for aggression, self-interest, and irrationality, do you gain the self-possession required to stand without flinching. Today, we confront the 10 most brutal truths about yourself, the psychological realities that, once accepted, strip away the moral armor of pretense and reveal the core of unshakable, self-affirmed strength. This journey is not for the faint of heart. But on the other side of this uncomfortable honesty lies a profound, quiet fearlessness, the courage to live your life as a defiant work of art. Let's begin the difficult work of seeing ourselves clearly. Brutal truth, number 1. Your virtues are often just highly polished fears. The very first and most necessary truth to confront is this: the qualities you pride yourself on, your so-called virtues, are frequently nothing more than cleverly disguised psychological defenses. Your ego presents them as noble choices, but in the brutal light of Nietzschean honesty, they often reveal themselves as highly polished fears. Consider the person who boasts of their patience. Is this a cultivated strength, or the fear of confrontation, the terror of disrupting harmony, or the weakness that makes them unable to assert their will? The humble person. Is their humility a profound recognition of human limits, or the deep-seated fear of attracting attention, criticism, or the resentment of others? The generous person. Is their giving a boundless affirmation of life, or a desperate, transactional attempt to buy affection, security, or social standing? Nietzsche understood that the dominant morality often praises the qualities of necessity as if they were virtues of choice. If you are weak, slow, and unable to take risks, society praises you for being cautious and level-headed. If you lack the creative power to initiate change, you are praised for being stable and reliable. This is the great deception of herd morality. It takes the qualities born of fear and weakness and renames them to sound noble, making the weak feel good about their own paralysis. To become fearless, you must submit your virtues to the hammer of self-genealogy. You must ask, what fear is this virtue protecting? The fearless individual does not rely on moral labels. They rely on authenticity. They act from a place of surplus strength, not a deficit of courage. By accepting that your virtues are often merely your comfortable prison, you gain the power to break out. You can now choose to act not from a defensive necessity, but from a deliberate, self-willed courage. This initial confrontation, the unmasking of your own goodness, is the painful foundation upon which genuine, unshakable strength is built. Brutal truth. Number 2. You do not desire happiness. You desire power. The second brutal truth shatters the central myth of the modern self. You do not ultimately desire happiness. You desire power. We are constantly sold the pursuit of comfort, contentment, and a state of low-friction satisfaction as the highest aim of life. But Nietzsche recognized that this desire for a final, static state of happiness, A state of passive contentment is actually the desire to stop striving. It is the sign of a spirit grown weary. The deepest, most fundamental engine of all life is not the search for pleasure, but the will to power. The relentless, restless urge to assert your force, to grow, to overcome resistance, and to impose your form and meaning upon the world. Every action, from learning a new skill to winning an argument to building a family, is an expression of this will to enhance and elevate your own capacity. Your genuine drive is not fulfilled by mere satisfaction. It is fulfilled by overcoming. The joy you feel after achieving a difficult goal is not happiness in the passive sense. It is the feeling of successful power being organized and expressed. It is the recognition that you have successfully surmounted the resistance of your environment and your former self. The fearlessness this truth grants you is the freedom from the tyranny of pleasure. The ego fears pain and struggle because they disrupt the path to comfort. But once you accept that your true, core motivation is power, growth through overcoming, you stop fearing the struggle and start recognizing it as the necessary material for your life's work. This truth forces you to stop, sacrificing your potential for temporary comfort. It teaches you that the path to a powerful life is not paved with ease, but with the necessary, difficult, and joyous exertion of your own creative will. You must stop aiming for contentment and start aiming for magnificence. Brutal truth. Number 3. Your moral compass is built on revenge and weakness. The third brutal truth requires a ruthless self-examination of your core beliefs. Your sense of morality is often not a noble aspiration, but a system built on disguised revenge and weakness. This is the famous Nietzschean distinction between master morality and slave morality. Master morality is generated by the strong individual who affirms life and creates their own values from a position of surplus power, defining good as strong, noble, and life-affirming. Slave morality. The morality that dominates modern society is born from the resentment of the weak. The weak, being unable to assert their will against the strong, externalize their hatred and envy. They define the qualities of the master, strength, aggression, self-affirmation, as evil. They then define their own necessary qualities, patience, humility, conformity, as good. When you cling to a moral belief because it condemns a quality you fear or a person you envy, you are operating from slave morality. When your moral outrage feels intensely satisfying, you are likely enjoying the disguised revenge of resentment. This morality is a tool of psychological self-defense, designed to make the weak feel superior by condemning the powerful. The fearlessness this truth grants you is moral liberation. Once you accept that your moral judgments are often expressions of your own weakness and inability to act, you stop using morality as a shield. You gain the courage to act from a position of self-mastery rather than self-condemnation. You stop judging your life by a morality designed by others to keep you small and dependent. Instead, you accept the challenging, terrifying responsibility of becoming the creator of your own value, which is the only truly strong and fearless moral position. Brutal truth. Number 4. Your greatest strengths are rooted in your greatest weaknesses. The fourth brutal truth forces you to look at the shadows you try to suppress. Your greatest strengths are inextricably rooted in your greatest weaknesses. The ego operates on a logic of purity. It tries to quarantine and eliminate any part of your character it deems bad or unsuccessful. We try to be perfectly rational, perfectly kind, or perfectly composed. But Nietzsche understood that the deepest well of creative power is often found precisely in the area of your greatest instability, excess, or neurosis. The writer's profound sensitivity that allows them to capture the human condition is often indistinguishable from their debilitating anxiety or inability to cope with social life. The relentless drive of the entrepreneur, their tireless focus, often springs from a core of deep-seated insecurity or a past trauma they are obsessively trying to overcome. The weakness is merely the raw, chaotic energy that, when properly channeled and given form, becomes the unique source of genius. The fearlessness this truth grants you is the power of integration. You realize that chasing perfection is a weak, sterile pursuit. The truly strong individual does not try to be faultless. They embrace the totality of their character. They see their manic energy, their dark mood, or their sharp resentment not as flaws to be cut out, but as powerful, primal forces to be organized and directed toward their highest ends. To become fearless, you must stop being ashamed of your shadows. You must learn to say yes to the chaos within you. Only when you stop fighting your own nature can you stop wasting immense energy on repression and begin channeling that wild, dark force into becoming an integrated, complex, and unshakable self. Brutal truth. Number 5. The greatest burden you face is your own free will. The fifth brutal truth reveals the source of much of your modern anxiety. The greatest burden you face is not circumstance, but the paralyzing weight of your own absolute free will. The human spirit desperately seeks to escape this burden. We constantly look for authorities, bosses, gurus, traditions, or societal norms that will tell us what to do, eliminating the terrifying uncertainty of choice. We crave certainty, rules, and predetermined outcomes because they absolve us of responsibility. When you can blame fate, or society, or the rules, your small self is safe. Nietzsche understood that the moment you realize God is dead, the moment you grasp that there is no universal meaning, you are suddenly, violently free. You are the sole meaning maker. This is the truth of existential loneliness. The realization that every value, every purpose, and every direction in your life must be created and continually validated by you alone. Most people shrink from this freedom because they fear the consequences of creating their own destiny. The fearlessness this truth grants is total ownership. Once you stop seeking to offload your choices, you achieve the status of the sovereign individual. You realize that all of your failures and all of your potential glories are the product of your own choices. This is where power resides. The individual who accepts this burden of freedom is the one who stops asking, "What should I do?" and starts commanding, "What must I do?" The courageous life is the one lived in the full. Terrifying realization that every moment is an opportunity to assert your will and create value from scratch. Brutal truth. Number 6. You are constantly seeking to diminish the greatness of others. The sixth brutal truth shines a light on one of the most toxic, common human habits. You are constantly, subtly, and unconsciously seeking to diminish the greatness and potential of others. This is the psychological engine of resentment again, but applied to our daily interactions. When you see someone achieving a height of success you secretly desire, or even just pursuing a difficult path you were too afraid to take, your instinct is not to applaud. Your instinct is to immediately search for flaws, find exceptions, dismiss their success as luck, or find some flaw in their moral character. This is your ego's defensive mechanism attempting to maintain your fragile sense of self-worth by cutting others down to your own size. This act of diminishing is the surest sign of a life-denying spirit. It is the spirit of the envious spectator who cannot create, and therefore seeks to condemn the creator. Every time you engage in petty gossip, cynicism about ambition, or the search for hypocrisy in the accomplished, you are wasting the energy that should be used to elevate yourself. The fearlessness this truth grants you is the freedom from envy. By acknowledging that the impulse to diminish is an internal sign of your own latent, unfulfilled potential, you transform the toxic emotion into a constructive command. Instead of wasting energy tearing others down, you redirect that powerful, envious drive into raising your own standards. The fearless person is one who is able to genuinely and fully affirm the greatness of others, because they know their own value is not dependent on the mediocrity of their peers. They use others' greatness not as a source of pain, but as an arrow pointing the way toward their own highest possibilities. Brutal truth. Number 7. The suffering you. Avoid is the only thing that can change you. The seventh brutal truth challenges the central tenet of modern comfort-seeking. The suffering you desperately avoid is the only material that can profoundly change you and define your true purpose. We are conditioned to equate suffering with failure, something to be medicated, distracted away, or eliminated at all costs. But Nietzsche vehemently disagreed. He famously stated, "What does not kill me makes me stronger." He understood that growth is fundamentally an act of overcoming resistance. The intensity of the resistance is what determines the quality of the change. When you avoid the pain of disciplined work, the anxiety of risk, or the heartache of loss, you are preventing yourself from being tested, forged, and hardened. You remain soft and brittle. The suffering you encounter, the financial setback, the psychological confrontation, the agonizing betrayal, is not an error in the system. It is the necessary hammer used to sculpt a stronger character. The fearlessness this truth grants is the ultimate liberation, Amor Fati, the love of one's fate. When you fully accept that suffering is a necessary ingredient of your growth, you stop running from it. You start viewing hardship not as punishment, but as a privileged opportunity for self-mastery. The person who embraces this truth no longer fears failure, because failure is simply the point where the hardest, most instructive suffering occurs. They confront life's challenges with a profound sense of affirmation, knowing that the quality of their life will be measured by the quality of the difficulties they choose to overcome. Brutal truth. 8. Your beliefs are not facts. They are necessary errors. The eighth brutal truth demands profound intellectual humility. The beliefs you hold most sacred are not objective facts. They are merely necessary, provisional errors that give you the strength to act. Nietzsche was the philosopher of perspectivism. He argued that there is no single, transcendent truth out there waiting to be discovered. Instead, all truths are perspectives, interpretations of reality that we adopt because they serve the goal of affirming our life and empowering our action. We believe what we believe because it is useful for our survival and our will to power, not because it is universally correct. Your most strongly held political, spiritual, and moral beliefs are, at their foundation, highly effective fictions. You need them to organize your chaos, to motivate your effort, and to create the stability necessary to live. The danger arises when you forget that your beliefs are tools and begin to worship them as untouchable reality. This is when you become rigid, dogmatic, and terrified of any information that threatens your comfortable worldview. The fearlessness this truth grants you is intellectual flexibility. By accepting that your beliefs are provisional tools, you gain the courage to constantly question your own assumptions. You stop fearing being wrong, because being wrong is simply a necessary step in finding a more effective perspective, a new error that provides greater life affirmation. This truth makes you impervious to ideological warfare. You understand that the fight over ultimate truth is futile. The only worthwhile fight is the continuous self-overcoming required to find the strongest, most honest perspective available to you right now. Brutal truth. 9. You will never achieve a final, harmonious self. The ninth brutal truth destroys the comfortable illusion of the finish line. You will never achieve a final, balanced, perfected, and harmonious self. The ego craves stasis. It wants to reach a point of spiritual and psychological order where all internal conflicts are resolved, all doubts are silenced, and the process of struggle can finally cease. This pursuit of a static, final self is a guarantee of stagnation and weakness. Nietzsche teaches that the highest human life is defined by perpetual becoming. The will to power is a force that never rests. It demands constant growth, constant struggle, and constant self-overcoming. The moment you believe you have found yourself or achieved balance, you have merely paused, and the process of decay begins. True life is defined by the tension between what you are and what you must become. The fearlessness this truth grants is the embrace of restlessness. You stop being terrified by internal contradiction and psychological chaos. You realize that your doubts, your conflicting desires, and your persistent imperfections are not signs of failure. They are the necessary dynamism of a soul that is still alive and still striving to expand. The strong, fearless individual accepts the terrifying fact that the work is never done. They do not aim for quiet satisfaction. They aim for the audacity of their next creation. Their purpose is not a state of being, but the unrelenting energy of the process of becoming. This truth sets you free from the oppressive demand for personal perfection. Brutal truth. Nietzsche 10. The love you seek is mostly the desire to be possessed. The final, and perhaps most tender, brutal truth unmasks the raw reality of human connection. The intense love you seek from others is often nothing more than the desire to be possessed, affirmed, and relieved of the burden of self-responsibility. We look for love to provide an external anchor, a person or group that will unconditionally define our worth, take away our loneliness, and give us a ready-made purpose. This form of love is a transaction born of weakness. It is the desire to be swallowed by the other, to find comfort in belonging, and to escape the terrifying responsibility of standing alone. This neediness makes you intensely vulnerable, subservient, and easily manipulated. Nietzsche demands a higher, rarer form of relationship, friendship between free spirits. This is love that does not diminish the individual, but actively affirms and elevates their courage, their unique potential, and their striving for self-overcoming. It is love that demands the partner become more, not less, than they are. The fearlessness this truth grants you is internal self-sufficiency. By accepting that the search for total, unconditional validation is a fruitless attempt to escape freedom, you free yourself to stand alone. You gain the courage to be fully, uncompromisingly yourself, without needing external guarantees of your value. The fearless person seeks companionship not to complete themselves, but to share their surplus. They engage in relationships where the highest love is the mutual commitment to each other's growth and power. This is love that requires strength, honesty, and a profound, solitary confidence, the final, most courageous product of confronting every brutal truth about yourself. We have now walked the difficult path of self-overcoming, confronting the 10 most painful, yet ultimately liberating, truths about the self. We have seen that your virtues are often masks for your fears, that your true engine is the will to power, and that the morality you cling to is frequently a disguised form of revenge. We have faced the chaos, the necessity of suffering, the burden of freedom, and the pervasive nature of self-deception. This journey through brutal honesty is not designed to crush you. It is designed to forge you. Fear is the product of illusion, the belief that you are something you are not, or that the world is something it cannot be. When you confront the raw, actual facts of your psychological and instinctual reality, the illusions fall away, and when the illusions fall, so does fear. The only way to become truly fearless is to know yourself so completely, to affirm the dark, the contradictory, and the self-serving, that there is nothing left for the world to reveal about you that you have not already accepted. The courage of the honest man is not a matter of temperament. It is the natural consequence of total, radical self-possession. Your new life begins now. It begins with the courage to look at your darkness and say, "Yes, that is me. And with that very force, I will create." Thank you for joining me inside the inner citadel. If you are ready to use the hammer of truth to build a stronger self, please subscribe and join our community of free spirits. Until next time, be dangerous, be honest.